So how did you prepare to play Sean? What kind of research did you do? Did you meet, similar people who are going through similar things with autism and savant syndrome?
I've never met anyone quite like Sean. I mean, I have, people that I know in my personal life before the show even came along who have autism, and aside from that and the personal experience I already had, David and I both, went out and did a huge amount of research. I mean, of course, he had already done so, having written the pilot, but it was about trading documentaries back and forth, pieces of literature, and then an on-set consultant that we had too, who was able to make sure that we were portraying Sean as accurately as possible. But I guess the biggest takeaway from the research was the fact that Sean can never represent everyone who has autism. He can never represent everyone on the spectrum. And it's as much about finding what his particular personal idiosyncrasies were, and his interests and what makes him laugh, the people that we've seen him, maybe fall in love with in this first season. And that's as much going into creating this character as it is purely focusing on the fact that he has autism.
Yeah. You said, it's hard to represent everyone on the spectrum, but this has been such a powerful project for anyone who knows anyone with autism. My family, we have very close family friends who have children with autism. Does that mean a lot to you, though, to bring this show to the air and kind of represent, that community in a way that doesn't see themselves on screen?
Yes, that's obviously incredibly important and what we sought to do from the beginning. And I think the most touching and heartfelt, and meaningful responses that we've got have been from those people who either have autism themselves or know people very closely who do. And it makes it all worthwhile. I mean, David and I often say, it's more than a television show, and maybe it isn't. but we, you try and do the best you can, really, and put as much as you can into it.
And it's, the most successful network show to hit the air this season. That must feel pretty good. And you earned a Golden Globe nomination, and yeah, that deserves a round of applause.
Thank you. No, that was a huge. Thank you. A huge honor. That was a wonderful surprise, really. And I guess it felt like a collective achievement and something that we were all, I mean, I was on set when it was announced too, so it felt like something we'd all been working towards in the months prior. And I guess it's a new experience for me working on something where there is an immediate reaction. On Bates Motel, we'd film, the season, and then a couple of months it would all be released. And so it's interesting and exciting, especially for everyone who's working on it, for the crew who get to go home and watch it with their families and then come back in to work the next day. It feels more alive, even though we're in Vancouver and kind of trapped in our little bubble, and perhaps I'm not as aware of how it's been received as other people are. I'm just in a hospital set, and then I see my big face. I'm like, that's kind of weird. Yeah.
You've been in Vancouver for a few years now,
yeah.
Huh? Because Bates Motel was shot there? Well, I love it because I watch Dancing with the Stars and The Bachelor, and you guys lead right into that. So I just stay on my couch for an extra 4 hours on Monday nights. It's great.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, and then American Idol soon. It'll be this, and then The Good Doctor just slots on in there. No, it's lovely how people have responded to the show.
And let's talk about the medical drama. There's been a lot of medical dramas on the air for many years. Why do you think The Good Doctor is getting such great viewership? Is it because of Sean Murphy and who he is? Or, how have you guys kind of used that medical drama, per se, to kind of flip it on its head and bring something new to the table?
I mean, of course, the success of it isn't purely down to having Sean as the lead character, and there's such a terrific ensemble of actors. And we're all close, and everyone cares very much about this story and puts everything into it. I think in terms of Sean, what people have been attracted to is maybe his optimism and his hope. and that we learn something from him too. I think he has an innate curiosity and an innate desire to learn and ask questions that are questions that perhaps we don't ask ourselves enough. And not that the show is, doesn't seek to be didactic and say, hey, this is what you must feel or this is what you must think, but hopefully it sparks discussion that is useful, and especially at a time now when there is so much negativity that's so easy to come by when you turn on your television. I think there's something to be said about a character that remains hopeful about the prospect of the future of humanity.
Even last week, we saw a kind of touching episode where Sean treats a young patient with autism as well. Talk about filming that, and that was, I think, the first time that we saw Sean confront that side of himself as a surgeon.
Yeah, and I think he isn't necessarily the most self-aware person, and interacting with someone who also has autism, I think, compelled him to search for a little bit of self-reflection. So that was interesting, and yeah.
What is every episode, when you read it, do you get overwhelmed at all by all the medical jargon and what you have to memorize and what you have to know to play, a doctor?
Yeah, the medical jargon is, it's funny that the medicine seems to take a back seat. It sort of goes into what you were saying about why the show in general as a medical drama has been successful, because it feels like the character-driven stories are the main arc, and not that I forget the medicine, because otherwise surgeons watching the show will think, what are you saying? And we try to be genuine, but there's certain creative licenses that you have to take, and ultimately a scene in the operation room isn't really about the intricacies of the operation itself, but it's more how it fits into these characters' arcs and emotional journeys.
Now, do you think David, being the creator of House and another successful medical drama, do you think he was able to bring something special to The Good Doctor? Because I know Daniel Day Kim, it's based on a show that was in Korea, maybe?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So how did he kind of bring it to the U.S. and make it his own, using that expertise, too, from House?
Yeah, I mean, of course, he knows how to write medical dramas. I think Sean, and the show in itself tonally is very different to House. And I guess David, he says that he's maybe has more in common with House than Dr. Sean Murphy, and has to put his cynical side to one side when working on this. And I guess that's probably true with me too, as a Brit, with our natural cynicism. Mm-hmm. But no, the original Korean show was incredibly successful over there, but Korean dramas are only one season long, and then they kind of wrap it all up and move on to telling new stories. They don't have that same continuity as we have become accustomed to. And so whilst the pilot was very similar in structure, beyond that it became necessary to change the pace of the storyline and make sure that this was something that hopefully will be able to be on the air for a few years.
I think so. Coming from the film world too, and then diving into television, what's exciting about being a part of a television series? Because like you said, it's a big commitment. You never know how many seasons it's going to go, but you're banking on it for being on the air for a while. Where film, you're on the set for a few months and it's over. So talk about that balance, how you decide to do TV versus film or vice versa.
I guess I've never. It seems like the characters on television are, probably by dint of getting to spend more time with them, seem more compelling and richer in terms of an approach. And I guess in a personal way, I enjoy the. There's a certain, when you're lucky enough, as I was on Bates, to be on a television show that continued year after year, and hopefully on The Good Doctor it will be the same, at least for next season. That there's a continuity and a bond with people that you get to develop over time, as opposed to a film where you go in for 4 or 5 weeks or maybe a couple of months and do something and then move on to something else. It's nice to put down a base somewhere in terms of a city, and also just people and building relationships over time.
And yeah, like you said, living with that character for a while, does that help you, you know, if you came back next season with Dr. Sean Murphy, do you feel like you know him even more and bring something extra to him, an extra layer?
I hope so. Yeah, you certainly become more used to the characters over time. In terms of the research, as we were saying earlier, I feel like a lot of establishing the character and establishing the character of Sean it's done at the beginning, that you sort of have to make bolder choices and then you're stuck with them. Sean can't suddenly come back next season and be an entirely different person.
Be British.
Yeah, British, exactly. Why not, you know? So yes, we will see, but hopefully there will be a consistency.